My dad suddenly wants to have a relationship with me again, so I gave him a clear, unapologetic explanation of why I'll never forgive him. I don't regret it. The call came out of nowhere. I had just gotten home from work, the exhaustion of the day making my limbs feel heavy, when my phone buzzed with a message from my paternal grandmother. Her words were simple but loaded. Asterisk, your father wants to talk. He's been asking about you. Are you open to it? Asterisk. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. It was one of those moments where the entire world seemed to pause, waiting for me to decide how I would respond. To most people, the idea of hearing from a parent after years of silence might be something they dream of, a moment to heal old wounds, maybe even rebuild something lost. But not for me. Not with him. My mother died when I was 7, and I was left with memories that were hazy at best. A few moments before she got sick, some echoes of her laugh, of her hands brushing my hair, of us doing something mundane together. But mostly I remember her absence. The long days in the hospital, the harsh white lights, the sterile smell of antiseptic that would linger long after I left. And her art. Before she couldn't do anything anymore, she would make me little collages, scraps of paper with scribbled messages, photos of us, all pieced together with love. She made sure that I knew she would always be there for me, even when she couldn't physically be. Those little pieces of her, kept in a book my grandmother made for me after her death, became my lifeline. When she died, so much of my world shattered. I wasn't a little girl anymore, and the pieces of that world never really fit back together. My dad, well, he was never really the same after that. It was like I wasn't even a person to him anymore. He remarried when I was 9, and that's when everything shifted. My stepmother made it clear from the start, she was the new mother in the picture and I was just a nuisance. It didn't help that my dad didn't stand up for me. It wasn't long before my brother came along, and I became even more invisible. When he was diagnosed with cancer at just 3 years old, that was it. I ceased to exist in their eyes. They wrapped themselves up in him. I was shoved into the background, told over and over again that I needed to understand, and not be selfish because my brother might die. There was never any room for me. The mantra was clear, he needs you more than you need him. So, I became an afterthought. I spent most of my teenage years in a fog of isolation. I wasn't allowed to be a child, wasn't allowed to be upset, and certainly wasn't allowed to grieve. My world became quieter, lonelier, and darker. At 16, I stopped trying to talk to him. I stopped trying to find any kind of connection. There was no room for me, not when my brother needed everything they had to give. When I turned 18, I left. I didn't look back. I moved out, cut ties with them completely. My grandparents, bless them, stayed in touch, but even they couldn't protect me from the immense isolation I felt. They understood the pain, but it was still hard to truly help. When my brother died a couple of years ago, they told me, but even that didn't make things better. It didn't change the fact that I had no father anymore. I had no family. Just the quiet hum of a life I was trying to piece back together on my own. But now here I was. My father had reached out through my grandparents. He wanted to talk. The message was simple enough, but the emotions behind it were anything but. I sat there, phone in hand, trying to figure out how I felt about this sudden reappearance of a man who hadn't been a part of my life for over a decade. How was I supposed to react? What was I supposed to say? I had therapy. I had worked so hard to build a life that was my own. I wasn't going to let his sudden need for redemption undo everything I had fought for. So, I decided to do something that might seem extreme, but to me, it was the only way to express the years of anger, abandonment, and betrayal that I had buried deep inside. I opened my laptop and began working on a PowerPoint presentation. It wasn't just a simple slideshow, it was a full account of everything I had experienced in the years that followed my mother's death. I went back through my journals, each one an entry into the lonely corners of my heart, where my father's absence was a constant companion. I pored over the words I had written as a teenager: frustration, loneliness, hopelessness. Some slides had literal quotes from my father during our few arguments. Some were descriptions of the dark times when I was so depressed, I didn't know how I was still standing. And then at the end of it all, I inserted a picture of one of my mother's collages, one that read, "Remember, your dad and I are always here for you." Beneath it, I wrote one simple sentence: "You failed." I didn't regret it. I felt it was the only way he could truly understand. The only way he could see what I had lived through. I wasn't going to let him off the hook, not after all these years. I wanted him to feel what I had felt. I wanted him to see how deep the scars were. When I sent it, I didn't expect anything. Maybe I was hoping for some sort of response, but I didn't need it. What I got was a flood of messages from the rest of my family. They told me it was understandable that I didn't want to see him, but what I had done was cruel. I had gutted him. He was a broken man after reading that presentation. And they all said the same thing: it went too far. I wasn't sure how to feel about their reactions. Maybe it was too harsh, but that's the thing no one seemed to understand. There's no perfect level of cruelty when you've been abandoned like I had. I wasn't cruel. I was telling the truth even if it was hard for him to hear. The family continued to push. They cared about him. They wanted me to forgive. But I couldn't. I couldn't even fathom it. Forgiveness was a foreign concept to me. I didn't want him back. I didn't want anything to do with him. I had no room in my life for someone who had failed me so completely. And yet, the people around me didn't stop. My paternal grandparents came to me trying to understand. I showed them the PowerPoint. They had no idea how bad things had been. They didn't realize how deeply I had suffered, how much I had been abandoned. They didn't know about the self-destructive habits I'd fallen into as a teenager, or the moments I nearly didn't make it through. They had thought I was just adjusting, but they had been wrong. They admitted that my father had messed up, that the family had failed me too. They wished they had known sooner, that they had done more. They asked me to reconsider reconciliation. But they understood why I couldn't. They promised not to bring him up unless I chose to, and they stopped passing on his messages. That was something. At least they were listening now. But I still didn't know what to do with him. Would I regret not forgiving him? Maybe. But I didn't think so. I couldn't imagine a scenario where talking to him wouldn't make things worse. It was too late for anything resembling a healthy relationship. If he really wanted to make amends, he could have tried before. But he hadn't. I wasn't going to waste my energy on him. I had my life to live, and it didn't include a man who didn't deserve a place in it. I was fine without him. I was as fine as I was ever going to be. So I chose to move forward. For myself.